Hello learners, I am Dr. Arun Kumar, faculty member, School of Management, Shastra Deemed University. In this session, I am going to talk about multidimensional scaling. So first of all, let us understand what is multidimensional scaling. So I have given you a definition here. So what is the purpose of using, which context we use multidimensional scaling? All that I have given you certain example and scenario. So if you look at here, multi-dimensional scaling is a series of techniques that helps the analyst to identify key dimensions underlying respondent's evaluation of your object. Suppose, when I do purchase, my preference will be different. When you make a purchase, your preference will be different. But the dimensions on which you try to perceive and purchase will be totally different with that of my perceptual dimensions. Am I right? So in that case, so we collect data from different consumers, the different attributes, and we try to group those attributes and or classify into several dimensions so that marketers can make strategy accordingly. So it is often used in marketing to identify the key dimensions underlying the customer evaluation of products, services, or companies. So this technique is very, very useful for marketers in the real-time situation. So let us also talk about, once the data is in hand, multidimensional scaling can help determine. So let's understand what are the contexts in which multidimensional scaling can be employed. First one is what dimensions. You can see here I have marked in red. What dimension respondent, the consumer, used when evaluating the purchase of a product or object or services, whatever. How many dimensions they may use in a particular situation, isn't it? When you go and purchase a laptop, I may go for high-speed RAM, graphical card, and more memory space, all that. When you go and buy, your preference will be totally different. So thereby we want to know how many dimensions they will use in particular situation in the purchase process, and also the relative importance of each dimension. Okay, and how objects are related perceptually, because when you want to measure the relative importance of how do they prioritize, how do they rank it, that we need to understand as a market, so that accordingly we can segment the consumers accordingly, and we can deliver our product and service to their requirements, right? So I think in marketing you would have studied about segmentation, targeting, and positioning, and this one, multidimensional scaling, will be very much helpful in that particular specific area. The purpose of multidimensional scaling, is to transform consumer judgments of similarity or dissimilarity or preferences. For example, here I given a preference for stores or retail outlets or a particular brand into distance represented in multidimensional scaling. How do they differ? When you go and buy, mobile phones, sir, there are certain segments may emerge because of the similarity or because of the dissimilarity. The dissimilarity causes because of the distance of preferences. Clear? So the resulting perceptual map show the relative position of all objects. So visually we can see what is the clusters, how they are, departed, on what dimensions they have been perceptually evaluated. All that can be captured using multidimensional scaling. Let's understand what is multidimensional scaling. What is it actually? Generally regarded as an exploratory data analysis, because the consumer preferences on certain dimensions or factors has to be explored. So in DIG 2006 has come out with this multidimensional scaling employed in their exploratory data analysis. Basically it reduces the large amount of data into easy to visualize structure, and it attempts to find structure, that is visual representation based on dimensions classification. I'm going to show you those depictions shortly. In a set of distance measures, the distance measures may be because of the dissimilarities observed between the preferences or perceptions. At the same time, similarities observed between the perceptions of consumers, between object, cases, product or services, and also shows how variables or objects are related perceptually. So how, by assigning cases to specific location in a particular space, it can be measured. Distance between points in space match dissimilarities and similarities as closely as possible. Similar object will have a close points and dissimilar objects will have a far apart points. So that's where we can able to classify that. So multidimensional scaling is a part of family model called multidimensional analysis, consisting of factor and principal component analysis. We are going to look into detail about the factor analysis in the oncoming sessions. These are the statistical techniques employed in exploratory data analysis. So I can explain you this, depictions here. You can see the distance matrix, which is given in a symmetric way. These are the different cities given, and it has been numbered, and also the cities are given and numbered. And there are two dimensions we observe here. One is north, south, okay, and the other dimension is east and west dimensions. Based on that, we try to cluster New York and Boston. You can see here because of the similarities, and the Seattle and San Francisco has been kept away because of the fact that there is a lot of the dissimilarities in space and distance. Let me explain this step by step, how multidimensional scaling works. So the data matrix can be called many different things. One is called the proximity matrix, or sometimes it is called distance matrix, or sometimes it is called similarity and dissimilarity matrix, dependent on what data is collected or how it is collected. In this particular case, I am calling it as a distance because we are calculating the distance between cities, because it reflects the actual physical distance between the cities in miles. That's what in symmetric 9 columns by 9 rows, because every city is compared with every other city. Most MDS scenarios generally consist of symmetric data such as this. Out of the distance matrix, a spatial map is constructed. Again, the map can be called many different things, and in fact we want to see visually, we can have a representation through perceptual map, the spatial representation among others. The spatial map is a representation of distances between cities enter into this matrix. I think I have given different cities. Cities that are physically distant from one another or furthest apart on the map has been captured here and been keyed in the SPSS data analysis. Further cities that are physically close from clusters on the map. And another component of the map is the extraction of the dimensions underlying commonalities, themes within the map. In this case, 2 dimensions were extracted and correspond to geographical dimensions. You can see here, one is north versus south and east versus west. And these are the cities with the distances in miles has been given here. These are the variables we need to key in to multidimensional scaling. Now it's time for us to how to execute multidimensional scaling technique in SPSS. So once you get the relevant data, what you can do here, you just better go to analyze and you go to scale, and you have multidimensional scaling LSCAL. You click that. Once you click that, you get the box like this. Okay, so what you can, these are the list of variables we have taken here. Select 4 or more variables that you want to test, and you may select a single variable for individual matrix for windows, depending on the distance options selected here. And The reason one has to select 4 variables because of the fact that it is a rule of thumb there must be at least 4 times more variables than dimensions. It's given clearly here. You can see here. As such, for at least one dimension to emerge, you have to have at least 4 variables has to be keyed in into the variable box here. And note that variables does not mean objects, because there will be many objects within one variable, especially in a ranking case. Okay. Next one is if then you go for my multidimensional scaling shape. If data are distance, for example, in our case it is cities, distances option is selected. Click on the shape button to define the characteristics of dissimilarities and proximity matrix. Create distance from data is used when the data is non-metric, such as ranking. It is nominal. By default, one generally always selects the Euclidean distance options, which is given here because the interval is definite here. And it create distance from data is selected. In our case, we are taken in miles. Click on the measure button to control the computation of dissimilarities, to transform values to compute distances. So then you hit the continue button here, and you get the output, and you can see the perceptual mapping, which you can interpret how I was doing interpretation on this one. Isn't it? A visual implication. Through the visual representation, you can explain the clusters and the similarities and dissimilarities. Visually, the presenter and the observers can understand how it works, and accordingly they can execute strategies. Clear? Hope you understand through my input what is multidimensional scaling. I suggest please visit student version from IBM, this SPSS software, and try to have some kind of simulated data and try to explore. And a lot of YouTube videos are available. Please watch my video and the study materials, and hope certainly you will understand what is multidimensional scaling. At the same time, you can employ in your companies in real-time situation. If you're feature managers, you can make informed decisions. Thank you so much.